Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, where we respond to your questions on history, on economics, on first principles, on culture and its relationship to public affairs, and all those things that are involved in our effort to reflectively build a decent society together.
Here's one. Why is it that we get upset when Iran or North Korea or somebody like that tests, say, a nuclear missile or does something with nuclear weapons, and not, say, when America has or does anything with its nuclear weapons?
I think that's a great question. It's such a simple question, not simplistic, but clear. It cuts to the heart of things. And the answer has to be because they're a bunch of stinkers and we're not.
Oh, that's funny. That was my answer.
People look at international affairs and they think about the rights of nations and the attempt to have a fair set of rules, as we like to have in dealings within a society. Everyone is equal before the law, even if they're a cretin, until they're proven to have committed a crime. But international affairs isn't quite like that because there aren't courts and there aren't independent inquiries. Inter arma silent leges, right? Among weapons, the laws are silent. And although you do try to conduct international affairs with a modicum of respect and pretend that the foreign minister of some third-rate hellhole is the equivalent of the often not terribly inspiring Secretary of State or foreign minister from some democratic country, at bottom, there are those societies based on liberty under law, and there are those that are based upon tyranny. And there's a long and involved argument whether tyrannies are more aggressive in foreign policy, and I come down on the side that they are, although it does vary. But what really matters is their purposes are illegitimate, both in extending their nefarious rule and in protecting it at home. I'm not saying we should go and attack them, but I am saying they have no right. The Soviet government had no right to govern the Soviet Union, let alone to attack Western Europe. The Iranian government has no right to govern Iran, let alone to try and extend its sway through Lebanon and eventually, wipe out Israel and all the evil things it wants to do. And they are evil things, like the North Korean government, which keeps making these superficially comic threats of nuclear annihilation of South Korea, the United States, or whoever it may be, and one day they're really going to try it. And they are going to try it because these are evil regimes. They deny the truth of human dignity in theory, and they deny it in practice. And that is why we have to be stronger than our enemies, because we're the good guys and they are not.
Okay, well, that's imperialistic.
It's not imperialistic.
Well, that's what they say when you talk like that.
Sure,
right?
They say that. Who are we? Just because we... And this is weird because you look at this in context of the Middle East and all these groups that say, down with Israel, they're wretched, they're awful, they're horrible, including some of these gay militants. And you say, well, Israel's the only place in the Middle East where homosexuals are respected. And, as the Netanyahu just said, because they're made in the image of God, right? And that is not something that you find among Israel's neighbors. And yet people, when you deny that we're the good guys and they're the bad guys, you don't wind up saying everybody's equal. You wind up with a moral inversion. You wind up siding with evil time and again. And there's a lesson there. Either you admit that those societies that imperfectly do embody those things that we think are most important, respecting the dignity of the individual, extending rights, giving everybody equal treatment, respecting women, not being bigots, all this kind of stuff. Either you say those societies are better, or else you say they're worse. You cannot be morally neutral in this. You're either right or you're wrong. And the right people have to win the battles, from Carthage through to the parliamentary forces in England in the Middle Ages, down through the Napoleonic Wars, the World Wars. And today, it matters. It matters that the good guys be stronger than their adversaries, or life on Earth will become the hell that it is in many of these tyrannies.
Okay, but wait a second. Not everybody in Canada, the United States, Israel is a good person. There's a lot of bigoted idiots in those countries as well. And not everybody who lives, say, in Lebanon is a moron, right? There's a lot of good people who live in countries that are governed by evil tyrannies. How do you sort this out?
Well, of course, that is true. And if there's a war between an open society and a closed society, some soldiers fighting for the closed society are good people who deserve to live. And frankly, some soldiers fighting for the open society are bad people. And you can't change that. Remember what Immanuel Kant said, from the crooked timber of humanity, no straight thing was ever made. We are imperfect, but part of what makes us better is that we acknowledge our imperfections. We talk about them, we debate them. Those good people living in Iran, the good people who lived in the Soviet Union, the good people living today in China, all around the world. Because as Solzhenitsyn said, the line between good and evil doesn't follow national borders. It's through the human heart. But those people are not given an effective say in how those societies are governed. And if it comes to a showdown, we cannot afford to let their governments win. That's why the Allies bombed German cities. They knew they were killing perfectly innocent people. They knew that they were killing babies. They understood what would happen when you drop bombs on inhabited areas. But it was a choice between fighting the war, including killing good people on the other side, and letting Hitler win. And you can't let Hitler win. That's why you have to grasp it for all the imperfections of our society and of our way of making war. Recognizing that sometimes our foreign policy is wrong. Sometimes we don't fight wars in the right way. Sometimes we even fight the wrong wars. But at bottom, there is this openness, this willingness to confront error, to admit failure, and to try and fix it. And that, against the belligerent, preposterous, and yet wicked behavior of a Mussolini or a Kim Jong-un or an endless cast of these pompous, absurd, brutal, thuggish, and aggressive characters, we must be stronger than they are. It helps to deter war, and when war is not deterred, it preserves decency against the onslaught. And that is what it is. It's an onslaught of those people who would plunge us all into darkness.
So are you saying very quickly that if you have moral clarity, you are doing something better for peace than if you're just belligerent?
Yes, and that doesn't mean you're going to deliver the New Jerusalem. It is not given to human beings to achieve perfection. But those societies, and one of the characteristic marks of the evil is that they say they can achieve perfection. The Iranian government believes they can bring the Mahdi out of the well and all man's problems will disappear. The Soviets said under socialism, there would be no wrongdoing, there would be no injustice, no cruelty. They promised us heaven and they delivered hell. And we're the ones who say we're going to keep trying to make things better on earth. And that is such an important difference. You cannot allow it to perish. You cannot use a fake kind of perfectionism to lead you to embrace evil and call it open-mindedness, because at that point your brain has fallen out your ear and something has crept into your heart that does not belong there.
All right. Thank you for that. Folks, if you want to play along and ask your question of the professor, look on your screen. There's the URL. It will explain to you how you get to do that. Thank you, and see you next time.